Today, we're looking at circularity in action at the Waste Management Recovery Center in Auckland. Welcome back to Infrastructure Connections, the podcast where we explore what makes sustainable infrastructure work. Our guest today is Ingrid Cronin-Knight, Chief Growth and Sustainability Officer for Waste Management New Zealand.
So we're sitting currently in our West Auckland facility. We have one in Central Auckland and one in North Auckland. They've typically been transfer stations, so all waste would come into these sort of sites and then get consolidated and head to a landfill. What we've been doing is using these consolidation facilities now to take in loads of building and construction waste, and then we'll put them onto a conveyor belt. We'll try and strip out the metals, the timbers, the jib boards, the plastics.
The key to the whole operation is in this one room. Every 8 minutes, a truck drops off a load of waste. It's then sorted by machine into piles, which are in turn loaded onto a conveyor belt. Pickers manually sort through the materials for timber, metal, jib, cardboard, and more, and drop them in giant bins. What's left goes through a powerful magnet to pull off any remaining metals. But how much waste gets processed and recycled?
Yeah, so we pick up about 1 million tonnes of waste overall, and last year we recovered about 250,000 tonnes. That's not just building and construction or infrastructure activity, that's more across the whole board. In building and construction, we have a few facilities which we'll talk about, but they can recover between 50 to 75% depending on different projects and what they put in the bin. But yeah, concrete crushing and creating aggregates, metals is a large recycling form. We've got timber as being a waste. There's people that we take it and we compost it or turn it into mulch. There's ones that turn it into a chip that goes into kilns to be burnt. So, there's a range of different things. Those are the big materials, and then you step down to plastics and all class of plastics. So films, which would be packaging waste, PET bottles, HDPE, all those different types of plastics. There's different streams for those. Polystyrene we melt and ship overseas. So there's just a vast array of different materials, but they've got to be of a good quality to be accepted as an input product. We've just gone live really last year with a joint venture with LE Access Group. So they produce PVC piping, like Marley, your plumbing piping. And so with them, we take HDPE or PVC and down and crush it to polyprop. And we shred it in such a way, so we distill it, wash it, shred it, and it comes back as granules, and then it will go back and come back as your Marley pipe.
So you're basically creating both a commercial opportunity and an environmental opportunity.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be part of an organisation where, like innate in the products and offerings that it does, it achieves those outcomes. Yeah, the best quote I ever heard was that the circular economy is mining the economy. Right. For the products rather than the environment,
The circular economy is an economy. The reason I wanted to talk to Waste Management is because now the waste they've been given has become an input, a product.
Well, what's fascinating about this industry is that in most industries you either they give you money and they give you a product and service. In this industry, they give you a product and money. It's but what you can do with it and what the chances to do with it are different. But what defines something as being waste, and then when does it become an input product? And that sort of labelling and that those are blurred lines, but I think to make money out of recycling or at scale, you need to be able to collect it, sort it, and sell it at scale. What we find is that in order to sell it, you've got to have a good quality on it. And generally speaking, a lot of material that comes in is highly contaminated. And so it makes it a real challenge to people who actually don't want your waste. They actually want a quality input product. And so that's some natural tension that you do find in this industry.
I had heard that some people recycle houses, binning each component separately. What does that even look like?
There's an organisation that does manual demolition where they go and strip it. It probably takes them 5 days to pull it apart, and they can recover the timbers and the insulation, and they treat the house with a lot of mana. When they pull it apart, and can get the highest kind of recovery rates from that process.
How much of our construction waste can be recycled effectively?
Yeah, so it varies depending on mixed construction loads, how contaminated things are, but we generally speaking see that most projects will on average be between 50 and 75%. We do have specific projects that we've been able to achieve over 90% with, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
The challenge is that the demand for that kind of recovery is quite low still, and not every project does seek to get that kind of high levels of recycling.
Not everything we use in infrastructure can be recycled, and it's good to know what those are so we can work on replacing them with products that can, or designing them out altogether.
Yeah, there's some challenges with infrastructure like geocloth, and there are some challenges around it. Some of the plastics are heavily contaminated, so it can be a challenge. So particularly things like sewage pipe we don't recycle. So there's health standards and things like that. But we tend to find a lot more demand though from the commercial and residential sectors at the moment rather than infrastructure. So one of the challenges we have in New Zealand actually is treated timber. So we turn non-treated timber into everything from mulch and bark and different products, but treated timber itself at the moment, the only outlet goes up to Golden Bay Cement and goes into the kiln there to create more cement. So in Australia they grow a lot more hardwood, and so they don't have the same kind of problem. We grow a lot more softwood and then treat it. You're only avoiding it for one cycle, and the circular economy, you really want to have it be able to go around many cycles. So the best way to make sure that things get recycled is to separate out the materials on site. Now, the building footprints are getting smaller and smaller, so sometimes that's hard to do, and we do have the ability to put into one bin many of the different types. But it's something we do typically in the central Auckland facility, but here we do it on demand when customers really want that sort of Green Star, Home Star reporting. But yes, we specifically have to have that Green Star or Home Star reporting. So if the client really wants to see some environmental standards, then it tends to filter through. But they have real challenges on site, like the subcontractors that come onto the site. If they don't care or haven't been onboarded, they won't necessarily follow any of the clear guidelines that people have.
Outside of Auckland Central, waste management doesn't voluntarily recycle materials unless it's a high-value good. This is because of the high cost of sorting, and in some cases, there are structural impediments such as consents that require the facility floor to be clean every night, meaning all waste needs to be sorted and removed rather than left in a pile to accumulate value tomorrow. So what are those kinds of structural barriers?
In Australia, they've got quite a high waste levy. So to get context, it's probably between $130 to $150 a tonne. So there are large markets that are aiming to recycle every skip bin. So Bingo, for example, in Sydney have a huge facility where you put all these skip bins onto these conveyor belts, and then it completely automates the process of streamlining the extraction of the hard fill material, the metals, the timbers, etc. And they get high recovery rates. But here, our equivalent levy for those would be $10. So we just don't have the funding stream to get those kind of soils extracted. The next tier we've got is $35, but there's a big difference between $100 difference, which makes all the difference to how you can process it.
Would that make a big difference in the market if we had higher levies here?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that if you have higher levies, you can fund more recycling and more automated recycling, and that will make a difference. The general rule of thumb is you probably need to have at least be $120 a tonne, and then that is when the recycling market starts to flourish. Yeah, well, I think the way I think about it is that tonnes will find their ways to the lowest cost disposal over time. And so in New Zealand, having that differential of levy is actually prohibitive for the market. If it was just normalised and harmonised, that would make a big difference to more recycling. So at the moment in New Zealand, we have 41 Class 1 landfills, or between 38 and 41, depending on some are shutting and closing. So we've got a lot of regional infrastructure for them, and that's really important that you have that, because if you have a large storm or a flood or a pandemic, you need to dispose of your waste really safely. The next tier is of landfills, Class 2, which takes construction waste. We're starting to see them pop up more because they have a lower levy in the waste. So a couple of years ago, they probably did a couple of 100,000 tonnes. This year, just gone, would be more around 500,000 tonnes. So there's definitely people diverting it to more B and C because there's a lower levy. And then the soils, the managed fills, those ones which only have a $10 levy, we've seen quite a bit of things go out of the market and more recovery happening onto other building sites at the moment. So, yeah. So we're currently trying to get consent for a resource recovery park in Wellington. Wellington is serviced by 3 landfills, and they don't really have collections. It's quite challenging. So we're actually in the process of trying to build a new facility once we get consent there, which will support building and construction recovery.
In our previous episodes with Vina and Nicole, we've talked about the importance of keeping recycled material onshore to feed local production and manufacturing. But how much of that happens, and how easy is it to actually do?
Yeah, well, I think just to clarify, the biggest source of recovery, particularly from construction, would be hard fill. And that's not necessarily going back to a remanufacture. It's going to fill in other projects or land or soil help on those. Metals, there's definitely can be metal recovery in country. That's the other next biggest weight, and timbers. Timbers, as I said before, it gets burnt. So in Europe, they consider burning a waste as being disposal still. So we have that. We have good outlets for treated timber. So I think in the building and construction industry, you'd probably say 70-30. We're still shipping offshore things like the clear plastic wrap that comes around products for packaging, cardboards, polystyrene, those things get shipped offshore. But the plastics, I just talked about, Fletcher's have come online with a jib board manufacturing plant here, and that's got recycling and recovery as an input into it. And we've come online with PVC piping and HDPE. So the more that we can get those facilities onshore, the more you can stop shipping it off. Yeah. So we call that chain of custody. There are some complexities, which I'll talk about shortly, but if you look at hard fill, 100% of that happens onshore. If you look at some of the plastics, so the plastic film I talked about, 100% of that goes offshore. Cardboard used to be 40% onshore, 60% offshore. So there's different ratios. Polystyrene's 100% offshore. Timbers, 100% onshore. It does vary by material type. As you come to a consolidation facility and then it goes to another consolidation facility, it's hard to have line of sight from that individual skip bin load to where it ends up. Right. But we are committed to improving that, and in New Zealand, on certain projects, if you request it, our team actually definitely show you the destination where it's been disposed of, where it's been recovered at. And it's more manual as opposed to automated at scale. But that's where we want to go, is having that good transparency, not just onshore but also offshore. We can tell them broadly who we go to. So for example, we have a trading desk that sells cardboard to a range of different mills, and they are Indonesia, India, China, different places based on stock price at the time, and so it's really hard to go that bound of cardboard goes to that one mill at that time. Right. But we are transparent about where we take it, and we also make sure that they're the kind of mills that have the kind of ethical standards that we would like to work with. But it is really hard to give that this bundle has gone to exactly where it's gone to.
Do your teams ever visit those mills?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got people going over them all the time to make sure that they're of the standards, and then in certain ones we want to make sure that they're audited to the kind of quality, particularly around the ethical labour standards. We want to make sure that those are complied with.
Even with the high percentage of recovery possible at these facilities, there remains a problem. The recycling is the end of the journey, so we need more emphasis on designing out virgin materials in the first place.
Well, I was saying offline that as a designer, you generally get given about 3% of the time to kind of figure these things out. These are really complex issues, and but in that process, you lock in all your long-range costs. So if you can design things to reduce the amount of material impact, you're taking it out of the whole system, and that would be an amazing thing. So I think design is a pivotal part of this process. The other part that the government's helping with is extended product stewardship schemes, or extended producer responsibility, but that's when they internalise the costs of the waste to the people that are actually producing it or distributing the products. That's a good lever, because then they become responsible for those costs. I think that generally speaking, probably 70% of materials and products, if they were designed right, would be recoverable. You're always going to have, entropy is a natural part of life, so you're always going to have waste. Even somewhere like Germany, which has 80 million people, they're still disposing of 40 million people's worth of waste. So you're always going to have, and they lead the globe in recycling, so you're always going to have this residual waste stream, and it's important for health reasons that we take care of that. But I think there's the chance for 70% of recovery. I think that probably 30 to 40% is probably easily recoverable, and that next 30% needs some changes to the way we design our products, the material specs, and the price of those virgin materials.
Governance is a major factor in the success of any sustainability program, so I wanted to know how waste management incorporates this philosophy into their daily roles.
As a leadership, we believe that for both the board and at the executive, we believe it's the right thing to do. Our strategy is called Potohita, which means to be circular, and we measure our top 50 leaders in the company by a balanced scorecard on those measures, but they cover off increasing circular recovery, being carbon neutral by 2050, making sure that you protect the environment in terms of any concerns, health and safety, that we look after our well-being of our people. All those things are in their balanced scorecard. But so it makes sense. We've set the strategy, we measure our people on it, and we're making good progress. I think last year, the year prior, we only recovered over about 200,000 tonnes, and then last year we're up to 250,000, so we're making really, really solid progress.
So right now, dear listener of Infrastructure Connections, you're probably wondering, what can you do right now to encourage recovery of infrastructure materials?
So I think the one thing, there's probably two things actually. The first one is sort on site. The more you sort on site, the best chance of recovery there is. But the more elegant one is actually leveraging your buying power. And so we had this example with one of our aged care customers where they couldn't recycle the plastic wrap that was coming around their timber bundles because the size of the logo was too large. So they went to the supplier, which is a really large construction supplier here, and said, we need a smaller logo on that. And once they got the smaller logo, made sure that the logo wasn't in colour, it was just black and white, then the people that actually recycle it could take it as an input product. So I think that if you can work with your suppliers to reduce the amount of waste they give you. I sat on Skip the Skips, which was a sort of government funded around how can we reduce our waste, and we had this session at the end of it. We had all these people that worked on a project looked at the waste on the walls, and the one thing that they saw was how much packaging waste. So we had light bulbs inside concrete, light fittings inside of a cardboard box, inside of another cardboard box, inside of another cardboard box. If you can remove that waste, it can make a difference. So working with your suppliers to reduce the waste they give you at the front end, I think would make a difference.
We learned a lot from our visit. Recycling isn't easy, but when done right, we can recover a good portion of our infrastructure materials, especially concrete, steel, gyp, and timber. We also learned that the simple act of higher waste levies encourages both more recycling and more emphasis on designing out waste. What we need now is more facilities like this one in Selman Road and less landfills. Most importantly, we have to remember that aside from food waste and green waste or general recycling like glass and plastics, the vast majority of what we throw out as individuals goes straight to landfill. That's what makes specifying recycling on infrastructure projects so important. Since these materials are the easiest to recycle, we can make a massive impact.
The thing I'm passionate about is not just the recycling of it, but if you can turn it up the waste hierarchy into the same product back into products, then that's a great outcome for us all.
Thank you for listening to Infrastructure Connections. Please take a moment to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and we want your feedback. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment below. Tell us what thoughts this episode gave you, or drop us a line at the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. Stay tuned for the next episode, coming up next on Infrastructure Connections.